Let's see. For the sake of just starting, let's say that for me personally, in 1989, right there, around about 1989, very early, 19, that sounds terrible. 1990, I had been having a lot of different experiences. I was scared to death with like skeletal-looking creatures that I didn't know that they would call the Greys, coming through windows, having horrible, horrible nightmares, not knowing what was going on. And then one night I woke up, and around the edge of my bed was a blue fog. It was kind of a misty, beautiful blue, kind of electric blue fog that was just pouring in around me, around the bed. And I put my feet down, and soon my feet disappeared, and the fog rose up to my ankles. And I felt no fear, and I'd about had enough, not understanding what was going on. And I got up in my gym shorts and my T-shirt and my attitude, which was pretty much fed up, and I followed this blue fog. When I followed the blue fog, what happened was I was kind of half awake, half asleep. I can't really explain it. They say that it's lucid, but it was more real than that. It was more physical than that. I remember walking outside and actually feeling the wet grass as I walked out front and followed the fog. And in the back side of the house was a very large, 7.5 foot, maybe, oh God, geez, sometimes I wonder if he was 8 feet, standing there over near my water well on a farmhouse in Virginia, and I just started yelling at it. But the minute that I was verbally yelling at it, the communication changed, the energy changed, and all of a sudden I was speaking to its mind, and it was speaking back to my mind. And that was I remember the definite, how weird that felt. He looked like an NFL football player. And in his hand was what we call now an iPad, but it had no backing, and he was able to touch it. And he would sit there and touch it and manipulate it with his fingers, and pictures would move about. And he turned it towards me, I think to distract me, because I'm going, who are you? What are you? Get off my land. I don't care who you are, whatever. I couldn't see much of him then, but he turned that and he said, I'm a scientist, and I'm here collecting data. And he started showing me these pictures on this backless, what now to me looks like an iPad or a smart touch or touch screen. And the only memory that I really had before regression was just kind of following around going, who are you, what are you doing? And that was just kind of the introduction. And from that point on, I just kept getting visitations from him and the Greys, and just lots of conversations, lots of questions. And then each time he revealed a little bit more of himself to me, but I never felt any fear. I had a lot of temper tantrums with him, which he delighted in some of them, and then some of them he just ignored. He wore a uniform with a triangular patch that I noticed that these other Greys, or what they call the Greys, were wearing too, but he seemed to be in charge. He told me his name because I had asked after so many visitations over a 3-year period, and I couldn't say his name. The frequency of his name hurt my ears, and I remember falling to the ground and saying, I can't do that. Okay, let me just call you Captain, simply because of the fact that I knew he was in charge, that I knew he was to me, he was like a captain of all these other creatures or beings that I'd seen on this ship. And we just had these series of conversations that went on, and he sent me unconditional love and acceptance. He eventually showed himself to me, which is a whole other interesting story, because I realized he was like lizard, snake, but I wasn't afraid. I just thought it was really cool at that point. And I lived with that for about 20 years. I just lived with it and what was going on. Got up and went to work every day, took care of my daughter, took care of my husband, and just went about my life, and just put it aside. Because any time I reached out, even I think in 2000 and 2001, I was still told, that I was lucky to be alive. which was really hard for me to believe after experiencing this wonderful creature, seeing craft, seeing other beings, experiencing a great amount of love that he sent to me, to believe that he could ever eat me, because he was never fierce at all. He was more like a teacher, and someone who cared about my well-being. So that would be just it in a summation, unless you had a specific thing that you wanted me to answer or go into. Because
I actually had a question. How often did he show up? Like, was this weekly or?
In the beginning, a lot. In the beginning, I wasn't really quite sure if after that first experience that I saw him in the backyard with the backless thing, which I didn't know what it was at the time. I just used to just call it this screen. Oh gosh, in the beginning it was like about maybe once a month. And then it got a little bit more frequent, maybe twice a month. But I remember after about the third or fourth time, I realized something was happening. Something was definitely happening, and I couldn't really explain it. I would just call him the lizard man. But when he would show up, I would just be very, very excited. Like I would wonder, well, am I going to see him again? Is this just a series of repetitive dreams? Why am I dreaming this? And then he would show up. I would just ask him more questions. But yeah, it would probably be about sometimes once a month, and then sometimes maybe twice a month for about 3 years, just straight through.
Oh, wow.
And I could never call upon him. Yeah, I couldn't say, lizard man, come see me. No, whatever. It's just whenever the timing was right, I would just wake up and he would be there, and we'd have conversations.
Mm-hmm.